Hey, Laura, we're going live any second now. Who do you want to do a shout out to?
I'd love to do a shout out to the Trevor Project.
Trevor Project. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got Lore Poudrier on the show today. Lore's a writer, queer arts performer, witch, and death doula. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Lore's a graduate and student guide of Going with Grace End of Life Training Program. And they have served as a death doula in the Los Angeles LGBTQIA plus community and polyamorous communities. Laura's taken up a specialization in paperwork for legal protections, planning legal projects and rituals, and helping chosen family plan memorial services and gatherings that mark the anniversary of a death. So let's jump into this. We're going to talk about death, baby. Yeah. Laura, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I am good. I'm dying to talk to you. I don't know how many dying jokes I'm going to be able to come up with, but I bet you've heard them all. Me as Michael Jackson, I've heard all those jokes. So guessing you've heard all the death jokes too.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little
Every
bit.
now and then I'll get a new one.
Okay. I don't know if I'll come up with any new ones, but we'll see what happens. So, we are going to talk openly and frankly and matter of factly today about death, which is a very hard subject for people to talk about. So, you are a death doula. Let's start with some obvious things. And what is the difference between a death doula and a hospice nurse?
As a death doula, I do not do anything that's medical. So a hospice nurse is often from the medical side of it. They'll do medications, they will work with the medical team for your end of life care. I am in charge of the more holistic side of things. So my job is to bring together the medical, legal, emotional, and spiritual aspects of death and dying together. And so while I will work with the medical team just so that I have all the knowledge about what's going on in the care, I'm not the one providing any medical care.
Are you in the hospital usually or at home when the person dies, or when do you step into the process?
So, my ideal situation as a death doula is to provide the family, the loved ones of the person who is dying with the most amount of information so that I'm not even needed in the room at the time of death, that I can just be a phone call away if they have any logistical questions. But really, my ideal thing is getting them so set up and so confident in the care that the person in the room with the dying are the people that they want there the most and not extra, so that there's less, really just less crowding
Yeah,
in general. Now, if somebody doesn't have that support network, then I will be there with them one on one.
gotcha. So your service is to the family, not to the dying. Is that the right word? Dying?
It's yeah, the dying. It's for the dying person as well. It's sort of because when you empower the family of the dying, you are in service of the dying.
Okay.
You are allowing them to have the death that they feel is most authentic to
Got
them.
gotcha. Now, the only thing that I know about death, other than the personal deaths that I've experienced, are the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and the stages of death and dying and that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
Do you work with the family through each of the stages? And when does someone literally go, you know what, I need a death doula?
What I hope for is as the knowledge of death doulas becomes more public knowledge, that people recognize that they need a death doula long before they're getting an expiration date, because really making all the decisions about your care, about what you want done with you, about how you want your estate split up, all the things that go into death, those decisions are so much easier to make when you don't have a ticking clock, when you can
Uh,
just sit and take your time to think about things. Oftentimes, when I am being approached by clients who have a family member dying, if it's not the dying person themselves, it is when they get that final, like, you've got 2 months, they've got a week, whatever that it is that they get from a doctor, and then they realize they have no idea what they're doing. And that's when people will come to me most often.
when would you prefer that people come to you? Like a week before, not 2 weeks before, a month before, years before?
Years. years
Years.
before. Yeah. Like, anybody watching this, hit me up now, really, because it being able to have those conversations, first of all, helps with the anxiety that a lot of people have around death and dying. Because the thing that's
Okay.
feared most is the unknown. And so if you're sitting with somebody and we're talking, we can slowly demystify all the things that scare you. Because I will be honest, I will be frank. I
Okay.
won't sugarcoat what the experience might look like, what might happen. And once you have those known variables, you can make the most educated decision for yourself and have that empowerment.
What are the things that you've talked to people about death and dying? Both of my parents recently died, and we didn't talk about the fact that they were dying at all. Um, and mine, they both came as, at least for my mom, it was a shock. That morning, my dad calls me into the bathroom and says, "I need help with your mom." And by the time I got her to the couch and laying her down, a minute later, she was dead.
Yeah.
Okay. He didn't know once the ambulance got there whether or not she had a DNR, do not resuscitate. So when should I have had a discussion with my dad, and what would have I'd talked to him about?
I would say for people who are witnessing, especially for people who are witnessing the aging process in their parents, in aunts, uncles, grandparents, that sort of thing, is once you start seeing a marked decline. So whether you're noticing that they're just not as sharp in conversation as they usually are, where they're trailing off or getting quiet, if you're seeing that they can't really rest properly, where they seem agitated, like their legs are moving all the time when they're trying to sleep,
Uh-huh.
if you're seeing them just having piles and piles of more and more medication to keep them comfortable, just we usually have a good instinct for when something is up.
Right.
And from there it would be to start having the conversations of like, hey, we're all getting on in age, what are your plans?
It's an interesting conversation, and I can talk from personal experience here. I couldn't even get my dad to wear the first alert, like you fall, and he'd already fallen twice.
Yeah.
So I've also talked with friends that said, you know what, you just have to take over. And at some point, the kids become the parents, right?
Yep. That's
And
very common.
what's that like when you talk to the children of the parents, and it's like you got to step in and do something.
it, if it's just one child, it's usually a lot easier.
Yes.
If there are siblings, it becomes a lot more complicated because you'll usually get, strangely enough, in my experience, it's usually the youngest child who's the one stepping up.
Hmm.
And the older ones, if there's more than one other sibling, you'll get a split of people being like, oh, yeah, no, we should totally do this. And the other one going, no, we can't talk about that. And so it's about how to navigate through those conversations in a way that isn't triggering
Right.
for the people who don't want to have that conversation, but
I'm
that is
pretty
also
sure nobody
empowering.
wants that conversation.
It's true. Nobody wants to admit that they are witnessing the progression. It's a
Right.
hard thing. It's a hard thing to see a loved one sick. It's a hard thing to see a loved one not be able to do as much as they used to do. And it's a very, very difficult thing to wrap your head around, the idea of what am I going to do when they're gone.
Gotcha.
And so, where I come in is encouraging people to go, well, you know, this will happen no matter what.
Hmm.
And delaying the conversation, I promise you, is only going to make this harder and worse. Would you rather be panicking about this when they are dying, or would you rather have all this done so that when they are dying, you can be there, you can be present with them, and you know that everything else is taken care of?
Is that a conversation that you suggest that the siblings have with their parents by themselves, or do you ever join in that conversation so that you can explain things? Because I know you specialize at least in paperwork. So
Yes.
is that another way to bring it up and say, oh, well, we need to do this paperwork, and then
Mm-hmm.
bring up the conversation?
Yes. So there are times when I will go, you know what? I think the best way to go about this is to have me come in as the professional person who takes care of paperwork and estate and planning. And then I lead the conversation like an advocate.
There you go. That would be very helpful. I know that would be helpful for a lot of people I know. Um, Now you work with the LGBTQIA plus community. For everyone who doesn't know what the IA plus is, explain that and why you specialize in that.
I stands for intersex, A stands for asexuality, plus stands for all the other letters we haven't thought about yet that we really should be putting in there.
And then why is that? Why is that a specialty? Why do you need? Why is that for the LGBTQIA plus community different than the? I'm going to just say the cis community.
Mm-hmm. So within cis and heterosexual relationships, there are a lot of protections that are automatic once you get married or once you are just part of society that just aren't there if you are a member of the queer community. So, for example, there are lots of very heartbreaking stories of trans individuals who die who don't have protections. Their remains then go to their parents, and the parents who never honored their trans identity bury them under a dead name and put
Uh,
out obituaries with the wrong gender and the wrong name. And it's very scarring for that person's community and their loved ones. You have family members who are not supportive, barring partners from hospital rooms, from funerals, from memorial services. So, what the type of paperwork that I do protects them. So, the easiest way to do that is what's called an advance directive. An
okay.
advance directive is a living document. So, you can change it at any time. In the state of California, you only need two witnesses who are not related to anybody in the paperwork to sign it to make it a legal document. And in an advance directive, you can say, this person is in charge of making decisions if I'm no longer able to make decisions. So, say you're in a coma or something like that.
Uh-huh.
You can say, this person is in charge of all of my funeral arrangements. You can actually write out all your funeral arrangements. You can write in sections people that are specifically barred from visiting you in the hospital, coming to a memorial service. If you have extremely homophobic, transphobic family members who you know would try and come in and make a scene, and you
Uh,
can just set up all those protections ahead of time so that when you die, who you were as a person is most represented above all else.
gotcha. You did a shout out to the Trevor Project. Is this some of the
Yeah.
stuff that they help with?
So the Trevor Project is actually more focused on queer youth and getting them healthcare, getting them into housing, and they're just very near and dear to my heart. Anytime I get to do any sort of charity work, I make sure it goes to them.
Awesome. That's a very very awesome project to be a part of. So I really have not I did not understand until I started talking to you that family members, people in the community would have any reason, purpose, or whatever in taking the basically the rights away from the dead person.
Oh yeah.
And I can't even imagine that.
What I have seen within my own community is you get people who are so convinced that they are right and so convinced that what they are doing when they take over like that is the thing that's going to save their child's soul
Mm,
or something like that. And then some people are just cruel, where they see their child coming out as trans or coming out as queer as an attack on them. And this is their way to get control of the narrative one last time.
yeah, I mean it has nothing to do with the person's living, and
Yeah.
I don't know how to even process that. It
Yep.
doesn't. So what other paperwork or what is the basic paperwork that you say to everybody you need this in place before you pass it along? What do they need?
So, advanced directive, power of
Okay.
attorney. And so that basically sets somebody up to make all the decisions that happens with whatever estates you have. That's always a interesting conversation to have, especially a millennial. We don't have much. Um, but there are still considerations if you it's not technically a paperwork thing, but if you can write out your wishes. So if there's certain music you want played at your memorial service, if you want people to wear a certain color, if you want to be wearing a certain color, if you have specific like top 10 lists of what you want done with your remains, to just have that all written down on a document that then the people who are in your advance directive and your power of attorney paperwork know where it is at all times.
Okay.
That's going to set you up so much better. If you are somebody with assets, having a will is also very important. It just makes life a lot easier. If you're not comfortable having a will, you can go in and basically make somebody else share, so you can put somebody else as a co-owner on your car title, for example,
Uh,
so that if you die, they don't have to go through a bunch of stuff. It's just theirs now. The same with like bank accounts and that sort of thing.
Gotcha. I talked to you about the DNR, the do not resuscitate,
Yeah.
and I didn't realize that there were different levels of DNRs,
Yeah.
and that blew my mind. I just thought it was either yes or no.
Yep. Nope. It's much more involved than that. That's something that does get covered under advance directive
Okay.
paperwork as well. So there are different levels of whether you're okay with having a feeding tube put in, whether you're okay with CPR, whether you're okay with the electric stimulus, where, because there are times when, no, you absolutely don't want somebody to do CPR on you, but they don't need to do CPR. They just need to do a trach.
Uh,
And so you can put, oh, well, then I'm okay with that type of a thing.
Gotcha. And is that something you need to discuss with your doctor, or is that something they discuss with you and you put that into the advanced directives? How does that work out?
So more often than not with advanced directives, you're not discussing it with the doctor. You absolutely can, if you would feel more comfortable saying, hey, can I make an appointment and have this conversation so that I know absolutely everything that there is to know. Often your death doula or a hospice nurse, if you're sitting down and doing this paperwork with them, will also know all the details of what everything is. And you can also research. So that's, it's not a pleasant thing to Google, but it is available.
It's out there.
Yeah.
So, if you were just going to sum up everything that we had talked about and that you think people ought to know so that they can get in touch with you and be ready to work with a death doula. By the way, do you work across the internet or do they have to be in
Yeah.
person with you?
Yep. I
Okay.
am I am a fully digital death doula.
So that's it, the digital death doula. No,
There we go.
your website is actually
Yep.
deathandlore.com. What would you tell people in that 60 seconds that says, here's the things that you know need to know high level so that you are prepared and can come talk to me or we can discuss when we get together?
So I would actually say the best conversation starters, what are you afraid of? So what are you afraid of that is going to happen to you, that is going to happen to your loved ones when you pass? And from there, we can have the discussion and we can talk about what the realities of those fears are and come up with ways to make it less scary.
That's perfect. Less scary is good. I think death is definitely scary. We all know it's going to happen.
Yep.
We don't know when it's going to happen or how, but it's out there. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure it'd be one of my genie three wishes. Get rid of that whole death thing.
Oh no, don't do that.
No, you would
No,
say keep it?
there's so many folklores about how that goes terribly wrong. Don't do it. It's a trap.
It's a trap. All right, awesome. I'm gonna take that one off the list then. I'll do something different.
Yeah.
All right. Laura, you were awesome to talk to. I mean, I really could go on and talk more about death, bring on people to ask questions and stuff. Thank you so much for being here. I want to have you back again sometime.
Yes,
And
please.
I'll see you in just a little bit.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye everybody.